Welcome back to another edition of Baseball for Maniacs. This video is going to dive into a very controversial topic that a lot of the big baseball media outlets have not reported on, and I don't think that's any coincidence. And this has everything to do with Mark Walter being under federal investigation for some of his financial transactions related to the LA Dodgers, right? And what I'm going to do in this video, I'm not a finance guy. I had to do a lot of research. This is all from the Wall Street Journal to kind of understand how this directly ties into on-field production, right? And I'll get into it. But basically, my conclusion before telling you guys all the information, the Dodgers championships are completely invalid. Genuinely, 24, 25, 2020 was already invalid. But what they have done is unbelievably crazy for the sense of the morality of baseball. And Mark Walter is probably going to go to prison. Like, this is genuinely insane. But basically, let's get into it, right? So Mark Walter used loans from his insurance company he controls to finance the Dodgers, right? Now, in that sense, it's like if you're taking loans out from your own company, it's a much easier transaction, right? Because you control the interest rates, you control everything, right? But it's not illegal. You're allowed to do it under a couple of circumstances. One, you have to disclose all of that information to the federal government, right? They have to know every single dollar that you're taking from your own company that you're loaning basically to yourself. It's a whole money loop, and you have to disclose all that information. And you also have a what's the word? Cap on how much money you can use. So essentially, Mark Walter is big in the insurance company, right? He has tons of insurance companies to where you charge the premiums. It's basically like a money bank. You have so much money. Now, what he was doing was financing the Dodgers, making all the big transactions with his own money. Now, if he was disclosing every single thing, every transaction he's did, and he stayed with the cap of how much he can use, completely legal, right? He didn't do that. So now Mark Walter has to come up with $20 billion before the end of the year, or most likely he's going to prison. And this all ties into the Lakers deal. The Los Angeles Lakers were sold for $12.5 billion. They were bought last year. If you think he just bought the Lakers just to resell it the next year to make a quick buck, I think it was $2.5 billion in profit, you're out of your mind. You don't do that because the way NBA franchises and really professional sports franchises have gone on the trajectory of their franchise value, if you wait a couple more years, you're going to make so much more money. So it's not just a one fixed thing in the sense of just buy it this year and then sell it for a little bit of profit next year. No one does that in their right mind. The reason he's doing that is because he needs to come up with 20 billion. So he just came up with 12.5 billion. And it's all in the sense of he doesn't want to go to prison, like genuinely. But there's also been talks about him selling his share in Chelsea. That's probably going to happen. And then assuming he's probably going to want to sell the Dodgers. However, he only has 27% majority owner stake in the Dodgers. There's like 20 billionaires that control the Dodgers. So I don't know how much he would get for his portion, but I wouldn't be surprised if he sells it, right? But let's get into the absolute craziness of how this directly ties into what the Dodgers are able to with their money, right? So the Dodgers signed a 25-year deal with Sportsnet LA for $8.5 billion, right? However, to make that transaction, to have it all be, confirmed, the Dodgers borrowed $1.5 million. Now, where did he borrow that money from? You guessed it, his own insurance company. And how does this tie into Major League Baseball? So, Major League Baseball requires teams to pay a 34% tax on their media rights revenue sharing, right? So, they have to spend it all out. However, let's see where the quote is. They don't have to pay back interest rates that they were borrowing from themselves. So, since it's his own company that he borrowed the loan for to support the TV transaction, he doesn't have to pay those interest rates. And guess what? Since it's his company, he does not have to, he controls his interest rates, and I'm sure they're at the most friendly in the sense of like it's not going to cost him anything. And even if it was, it doesn't matter because even if the interest was high, he's paying it through his own money because he owns the insurance companies and the Dodgers. Now, how this gets into it, since he doesn't have to pay the interest back, the Dodgers get a extra $324 million that every single other team does not get. You know, the Phillies, big Phillies fan, obviously. We have a great TV deal, so we make a lot of revenue from that. But the Dodgers have $324 extra million to put back into their team. And then comes back to in the sense of how this comes to the on-field play. Let's just see some of their contracts that they use that money from that they save from the TV deal and put it into the team. Shohei Ohtani, 10 years, $700 million. 68 of that deferred every single year. And also on the Ohtani thing, when the gambling thing happened with Ohtani, I was like, I mean, I don't think so. I think his buddy just stole it. I personally like Ohtani in the sense of he seems like a nice guy. He's the greatest baseball player of all time. So I'm like, dude, I'm one for conspiracy theory, but I'm like, I don't think he did it. Why on earth does Shohei Ohtani have a clause in his contract that if ownership changes, he can opt out of his contract? Maybe when the whole Ponzi scheme goes awry, Ohtani's like, I'll go to another team. I'll just go away and like don't have to deal with all this stuff with the legality. I don't know if that's true, but that's just a thing. And that's the biggest contract he had. And then deferred money in this whole sense. 68 of it deferred, 690 of the 700 million is deferred. I think that's two things. I think Mark Walter knew that something was going to happen in the sense of like this Ponzi scheme was going to get discovered, not in the sense of he thought he was going to jail. Because I think if he comes up with the 20 billion, he'll be fine, right? He probably won't have any stake in any sports teams, but he won't be going to prison. Make all the money you can now, defer as many contracts as you can, push that down the line in the sense of that's the new owner's problem. And since he doesn't have a majority stake, him selling 20%, 27% of the Dodgers is much easier to do compared to if he had 100% stake with all the deferred contracts on the books towards the later ends of the year. That seems a little bit silly, right? But in the sense of like deferred money, it's technically allowed in Major League Baseball, but everyone says, oh, everyone can defer money. Dodgers are the only team that can do that because before we thought they had an unlimited cash fund, which they kind of do with the insurance companies, but it's kind of going awry now. But they were the only team that could defer 68 million of the 70, like that he gets paid yearly. No other team can do that. So anyone says like Jeff Passan, don't blame the Dodgers, blame your cheap owner. I've always been under that notion, except for the Dodgers, because no owner can genuinely do what Mark Walter has done, and he hasn't done it in good morality. He's genuinely breaking the law. Now he's trying to fix himself. And you know, with the billionaires, they never go to jail. This is America. What are we talking about? Steve Cohen, maybe, but Steve Cohen's not an idiot. Nothing has come up with Steve Cohen. He just has a shit ton of money. John Middleton, who is one of the best owners in sports, has done it right in the sense of how much he can spend. So this is all going insane, but that's just on the Ohtani contract. We know what he meant for the Dodgers in 2024 and 2025, leading them to the World Series. He was their best hitter. Maybe not in the NLDS against the Phillies, which kind of contradicts the point of my team, but doesn't matter. They still won 2 World Series. He dominated the Brewers. And then you got Yamamoto. 12 years, $325 million. That's a lot of money. Where'd he get that? Got it from his own TV deal that he doesn't have to pay back into Major League Baseball. And that revenue sharing, what does it do? It helps supplement the smaller market teams. So now these owners that want a salary cap might have a point due to the Dodgers, but I'll get into that at the end of the episode. Blake Snell, 5 years, $182 million, a lot of that deferred. What did Blake Snell do to the Phillies in Game 2? Shut them down. How are they able to sign Blake Snell? Doing illegal activity. So any Dodgers fans, your championships aren't valid. Like genuinely, like if you're able to spend money that you should not be able to spend because it's illegal to buy your players, your championship doesn't matter. And that goes into the point of like when the Dodgers signed Kyle Tucker and Edwin Diaz, I was like, Dodgers fans, are you happy about this? You just won back-to-back World Series and you're stacking the deck again. Don't you want any competition? But they came back to me, look at my rings. Well, guess what, guys? You have no rings. None of your championships are valid. 2020 Mickey Mouse ring, and in the last 2 years, you financed the team illegally. So you have no championships. You're the worst fans in sports. You have nothing. Let's get into some other contracts. Kyle Tucker, 4 years, $240 million. Now, he's been awful, and I heard they're doing a standing ovation for him today. Okay, buddy, we're the original ones with that. That's authentic. You guys, pathetic. But 4 years, $240 million is a crazy contract that only him and the Mets could have given out. Now, if Kyle Tucker was playing like the back of his baseball card, the World Series might be already over. And even if they win the World Series, their share, again, it's not valid. Tyler Glasnow, 5 years, 136 million, a decent amount of that deferred. What did Glasnow do to us in game one? Came out of the bullpen. Game four was dominant. Were the shadows a factor? Absolutely. Shadows are always a factor in playoff baseball. You should never play a game when there's shadows in that 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock time frame. It is stupid. Whatever. But that goes back to the Phillies point. And am I biased? Absolutely. We lost to them in the NLDS last year. Tyler Glasnow was really good against us. How were they able to make that move? Illegal transactions. So you see where it's going, right? It's just unfathomable that this is happening and no major media outlet from Major League Baseball is reporting on it. They're always like, I'm not going to comment on it. I got to wait for more information to come out. It's clear and day what is going on. Now, how does this affect the impending lockout with the salary cap? Me personally, I think this almost amplifies that there doesn't need to be a salary cap, because the only reason the salary cap is being talked about in the sense of the fans, right? Because anytime there's a CBA negotiation, every single time the fans are on the side of the players. This is the first time that I've seen, and I've done my research on the 94 lockout, all that kind of stuff. This is the first time that I've seen that the fans are starting to take the side of the owners in the sense of the salary cap. But there's only one team that that's a problem for. It's the Los Angeles Dodgers. Because before last year, there wasn't a back-to-back champion since the Yankees in the early 2000s. So it's like, if the Dodgers didn't do this Ponzi scheme, they don't have their 2 world championships. And then the parity has never been better in Major League Baseball. Do I think there needs to be some restrictions on deferred money and maybe more luxury tax payments? Sure. But in the sense of like a salary cap, there's no need. And here's my thing. If there's a choice between a salary cap and no baseball being played. Obviously, I will take the salary cap. Does it affect my team in the Phillies? Absolutely, because we're one of the big spenders. But I'd much rather have baseball. The reason I'm so adamant against the salary cap is because I know if they try to push that, there's going to be no baseball in 2027. The players are not only willing to miss 1 year, they're willing to miss another year. And then what pisses me off is their entire merit of their argument of a salary cap tends to lead to the Dodgers. But if the Dodgers are doing illegal activities, which they have done, that has nothing to do with a salary cap or not a salary cap. They're just breaking the law. So you take the Dodgers out of the equation and parity is completely fine. That's where I'm coming from, because the players are going to miss multiple years. And why is that? It's because of the Dodgers and all that kind of stuff. And then you want to go into the Tarek Skubal thing. I think that was obviously pushed by Major League Baseball, because what Major League Baseball wants to do, they want a salary cap. All the owners want a salary cap, right? So they finally have merit in the sense of Dodgers are back-to-back World Series champions. You get Skubal, most likely they're going to three-peat. This is their one and last chance to implement a salary cap. If they don't, it's never going to happen. Me personally, I don't think it's going to happen regardless, because the Players Association is the strongest association in sports, and they're going to be willing to miss multiple years. The Brewers had better prospects. What is the Dodgers prospect doing that went to the Brewers, Zaire Hope? He's batting under 100 in his time in the Tigers minor league system. River Ryan is 27 years old, soon to be 28, and he was the second best prospect that went to the Dodgers. If you think some crazy stuff isn't happening in the sense of what the Dodgers are doing illegally, what Major League Baseball is trying to do in the sense of trying to push the narrative that there needs to be a salary cap because the Dodgers are too good, you're crazy. Like, it's real. It's genuinely real. But it's like, even if the baseball wants a salary cap and their whole merit is the Dodgers, that whole thing came crashing down with this whole report with Mark Walter, because he's able to use that money illegally. Like, genuinely, he can't do what he's doing. But I digress. I think this is the craziest time in Major League Baseball. I think more information is going to come out. But at the end of the day, and this is for Dodgers fans, you had nothing. You have no championship. And even if this didn't come out, like in your mind, you're like, oh, stacking the deck, stacking the deck. Here's some money, here's some money. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right with competition. But now you know all that money's fraudulent to where like none of your World Series matter. Genuinely, you guys were playoff chokers year in and year out. Dave Roberts, terrible manager. And then you do all this stuff, and then you get Ohtani. Then you get Yamamoto. Then you get Glasnow. Then you get Snell. Then you get Tucker. Then you get Diaz. Cool, you won a championship, but what does it matter? And then it's all fraudulent. So That'll do it for this episode of Baseball for Maniacs. I'm sure the Dodgers fans are going to crush me in the comments, as you should. You should defend your team. But this is insane. But as always, go Phils.